Hello and welcome to the transcription explanation of these designs. The only difference between the two is that the one on the left, this one, has the initials M, and T going around it, where these just have the blank spaces where the initials could go. I decided to do this blank one because it started feeling a little busy when I added the initials in those blank spots. And I don't have the bow tie included like you kind of requested or offered as an example for a way to add a little stylistic thing. And that's because this design is already pretty darn intricate and complicated for a 3-inch tattoo, and I don't want it to be too busy and for the details to be lost, because sometimes less is more. With that being said, let's go ahead and get to reading this design. You start reading the script at the bottom and you go counterclockwise, like a time traveler going back in time. And that means our first word is going to be at the bottom here. So here's our first word, then our second word, third word, fourth word. And then for the initials, bottom counterclockwise, first, second, third. So that is true for this as well. There's another little difference, which is the comma. So this here is a full circle that's filled in on our sentence circle, and that's a comma. And the comma in this design is here because these two shapes became the comma, and then this is that, that is that. Anyway, let's go ahead and read these designs. Vowels are these little circles. See how they are little circles that are not filled in? So these ones that are filled in, they're dots. And then these ones that have little breaks in them are other things. So this is the line modifiers on this W. I'll get to that when I get to it. But anyway, this little guy is a vowel, and it's floating outside of our word circle. Because it's outside, it's an A. In fact, here's another A here, another A here, another A here, and another A here. Lots of A's. The other vowels are either inside, so like this one is inside, or centered, which this one is centered. So A's are outside, O's are inside, E's are centered. I's and U's have lines going in or going out. But here's our A. And then we have this letter, and there are 1, 2, 3 dots closest to it. This letter is a full circle floating inside our word circle, and consonants are made by using the grid above me, and the grid is set up in different rows, where the top row is this horseshoe shape, like this one, and that means that letter somewhere in the top row. And then the next row is a floating circle, like this one, where there's a full circle inside of our word circle. Then the third row is a shallow divot. So unlike the deep divot, this is 50% or less of a circle. So like somebody took a munch or a bite out of our circle. And then our last row is a circle that crosses our word circle. So we have crossing and floating for our full circles, and then we have deep and shallow divots for our divots. So this is a floating circle, so we're in the second row, and to figure out the columns, we have to count up the number of dots or lines on it. So this one doesn't have any lines, and there are 3 dots closest to it, so that means it in the 3-dot column. So that's the letter L, because where they combine with the floating circle row and then the 3-dot column is the letter L. And then we have this shallow divot, so we're in the third row, and then there's 2 lines that end on it. And line modifiers count where they end on a letter, so if they pass through, they don't count. So those are 2 lines, so that's a W, and then the A is outside the word circle. A Y is a crossing circle with 2 dots. So even though these 5 dots look kind of together, we can still tell there's 2 with that and 3 with that. And then our S is a shallow divot like the W, but it has 3 lines instead of 2. So that's A, L, W, A, Y, S, always. And then we have our first initial, a floating circle with 1, 2, 3 lines. That's an M. And then this word, we start at the bottom again, and this is a horseshoe shape, so we're in the top row, and there's 1, 2, 3 lines attached to it, so that makes it an F. And then the O is a vowel inside, R is a shallow divot with 3 dots, W with 2 lines, shallow divot, A outside our word circle, R is a shallow divot with 1, 2, 3 dots, and then this dot here is closer to this letter, so those 3 with that one, and these 3 with that one, and then this deep divot has 3 dots as well, so that's another D. So F-O-R-W-A-R-D. So even though these are both the letter R, they can look quite different, with this shallow divot being a much shallower divot, and then these 3 dots being on the outside, with those 3 dots are on the inside. So long as it's a shallow divot with 3 dots, it's still an R. So that's forward. And a comma is a circle that is on our word circle, or on our sentence circle, which is this big old circle going around everything, and is filled in. A period is empty in the middle, but here's our comma. Here's another M, same as that. And then we have an N, a full circle inside our word circle with 1 line. E, centered. V, line going out. E, and then an R with 3 dots. So N-E-V-E-R is never. And then this big old word here, I'm actually going to zoom in on it a little bit so you can see it a bit clearer. We have our bottom here, and this is another horseshoe shape. So that would be a B, because there's no dots or lines, because the column above B is empty. And then A is outside our word circle. Something interesting is going on here with the CK. So in the script, the letter C can be swapped to an S or K depending on what sound it makes. You can also do a CH or an SH. If you're like writing ocean, you can do the SH. If you're writing cheese, you can do a CH. And this C is a K sound in backwards, so we can turn it into the letter K. And then we have two Ks in a row because there's the CK, and that means we can do a double letter. And a double letter is a stacked double circle like this. So you see how there's two circles like that? Well, that's our double C, or our double K. With two dots makes it a double K sound. So here's our two dots for that. So BA, double K, and a W is a shallow divot with two lines. And this line here wraps all the way around and connects back up here. So if we just ignore the fact that it looks like a circle and just focus on the fact that there's a line that ends here and a line that ends here, well, that's a W. Then our A is outside the word circle, and R is a shallow divot with three dots, and a D is a deep divot with three dots. And then our S, I did a similar thing with the two lines here that wrap around, so 1, 2 lines here, and then our third line goes out. So that would be backwards, and that is that design. And again, it's exactly the same thing in here, the only difference being that comma. So yeah, I hope you like the design. Thanks. Bye.